Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Collegeville Connections, our series of online events presented by the Collegeville Institute. If we haven't had the pleasure of hosting you yet, know that we're located on the campus of St. John's Abbey and University in central Minnesota. And this virtual series is meant to highlight the work of Collegeville Institute and alums and friends from across the spectrum of our programming. My name is Jessie Bazan, and I'm the program associate for the Collegeville Institute seminars, and I'll be your host for today. Now, many of you are watching this on the Zoom webinar. Know that this is also being streamed on the Collegeville Institute's Facebook page, and a recording will be posted there later today. We'd invite you to post any questions that you have along the way in the Q&A box or in the comment section on Facebook Live. We'll also be pausing a few different times throughout this presentation and inviting you to post things in the chat function. So we're really excited for today's Collegeville Connection, where we'll be highlighting one of our partner congregations in the Communities of Calling initiative, which aims to help Christian congregations deepen their sense of calling, meaning, and purpose. I'm so pleased to be joined today by my colleague, CCI Program Director Jane Patterson, and Pastor Chris Braudaway-Bauman of First Congregational United Church of Christ in Boulder, Colorado. Chris and her whole team have been so delightful to work with over the last few years. First Congregational is an active and discerning congregation. They're often trying new and creative initiatives to help deepen the spiritual lives of the folks in their community. And today you'll get a taste into one of those initiatives. Chris has served as the senior minister of First Congregational since 2016, and she's been a real wisdom figure in pastoral ministry for the last 30 plus years. So Chris, we're so pleased to have you with us today to be guiding us through this reflection of Pilgrim's calling through Advent.
Thanks so much, Jessie. Thank you, Jane. It's really wonderful to be with you, and I'm really excited to share with you a practice that we started last year at our congregation, and it was so meaningful to us in some surprising ways that we decided to do it again. You know, for all of us, during this time, we've had to learn how to do everything in new ways. Everything that we do for learning, for worship, for mission, we've had to learn how to do them in new ways. There was something that Liz Miller, who's the pastor of the Edgewood UCC in Lansing, Michigan, said, one of the other partner congregations in the Communities of Calling project, that she said very early on in the pandemic that I've just held on to, and it's really helped kind of frame our vision, and that is that we have to do our ministry inside out. So all the things that we did on the inside of the church building during the pandemic, because it wasn't safe for us, it hasn't been safe for us to gather together, and we're still not, fully all together. We had to learn how to do them outside. So we did things like for Christmas, we decorated the outside of our building last year rather than the inside. We learned how we are a downtown church, so we don't have a lot of outside space. We do have a plaza, and so we learned we held prayer services out there. On Easter Sunday, we actually worked with the city, and we closed down the street in front of us and had worship outside on Easter Sunday morning, as well as, all the things that we've learned in technology, and doing a worship on YouTube. The other thing that one of the things that we did last Advent in particular is that a member of our church who lives just outside Boulder has a big field. It's a small farm, only Sunshine Farm, and they mentioned to us that they sometimes mow a labyrinthian path through a field, and would we like to use it and to offer it to church members? And of course we said yes. And then we thought, well, you know what, it would be really wonderful to put up prayer stations along this path. And so that's what we did. And, we took the story of Mary and Joseph's story and created prayer stations to go along with it. One of the wonderfully delightful surprises is what an intergenerational thing it was, that people walk through this path slowly. If they're adults, if they're kids, they run through it and they flop down in the hay at the end of the path. But they also, stop and look at the pictures, and all of the art that we've used are illustrations from children's books. And it's just, and we've appreciated the whole, the story, the Advent story, the story of Christmas in new ways. So we decided to do it again this year with a whole new set of prayer stations, new art, new poetry, new questions. And we'd like to share that with you in this online version. So I'm going to share my screen, and just as we walk through this, there will be a few you'll notice that there are lots of questions in the poetry, and there are a few places along the way where we have questions that we're going to pause and invite you to reflect on them. And if you have a piece of paper or a journal, a notebook, or if you'd like to put something in the chat, please feel free to use the chat feature so that this can really be a communal experience. One of the things that we do at the Labyrinth is at the very end of it, we actually have a notebook that we invite people to write in and to leave love letters for others who are coming behind them and to reflect on their experience, so that it's not just individuals or not just families walking through the labyrinth, but indeed it is more of a communal experience. So if there's a way that we can offer that here, we'd like to, if you'd like to share with others. So, and then after that, we'll have some time for conversation, I hope. Anything else you want to add, Jessie or Jane, before we get started?
That sounds great. Thanks, Chris.
Clear, yes.
Okay, let me figure out how to share the screen here. Hold on just a minute. Let me make sure everything is optimized the way that we want. And I'll start the slideshow. Oh, hang on. That's not quite right. This is at the very end.
It is.
Actually, these are, and of course there's an invitation there for you to step and become a part of the story yourself. And we invite folks to take a selfie of themselves with these beautiful angel wings that a member of our congregation, a member of our arts ministry made, and to send us their photo so that we can include it in an online worship service. I'm going to stop sharing because I need to figure out how to get back to the beginning.
I actually love this little bit of a slowdown. You're helping us get ready.
Yes, the anticipation is perfect for the Advent season, right?
And I'm still, for some reason, I'm not able to get back to the beginning. So just give me a minute here. We're going to do it this way.
Perfect. The good old-fashioned way, right?
Good old-fashioned way. Okay, here we are at the very beginning. So just to give the poetry that you're about to hear, that we're about to read, is by Christine Rogers and by Anne Weems. And the illustrators there, the illustrations that you'll see, are from all of these children's books. And so we begin.
In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And he came to her and said, "Greetings, favored one. The Lord is with you." But she was much perplexed by his words and pondered what sort of greeting this might be. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus." Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I am a virgin?" The angel said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be holy. He will be called Son of God, for nothing will be impossible with God." Then Mary said, "Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word."
And the Word was made flesh. Before the angels broke into song over a field of shepherds, before the splendor of the star transcended the majesty of the heavens, a young girl from Nazareth quietly said yes to a thing she only partly understood, but her willingness was her magnificence. This we know and marvel at when we recall how you first came unto us. Are there things in your life that are waiting to be born, and all you need to do is say yes?
In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for her to deliver the child. And she gave birth to her first son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn.
Pondering the winter mystery. What is it that draws us to the stable year after year? What are we searching for? amidst the straw, following the gentle, steady gaze of the animals. What do they see? What do they know that makes them simply choose to be near?
In that region, there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Then an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger."
The angels are waiting. Everywhere in the world, with infinite patience, the angels wait breathless beside their great invitation. Will we open our hearts? Will we give birth to love? Will we answer yes?
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace, and among those whom God favors."
This year, I wonder if God comes to the edge of heaven each Advent and flings the star into the December sky, laughing with joy as it lights the darkness of the earth. And the angels, hearing the laughter of God, begin to congregate in some celestial chamber to practice their alleluias. I wonder if there is some ordering of rank among the angels as they move into procession, the seraphim bumping the cherubim from top spot, the new inhabitants standing in the back until they get the knack of it. After all, treading air over a stable and enunciating at the same time can't be all that easy. Or is it everybody, that is, every soul, free to fly wherever the Spirit moves? Or do they even think about it? Perhaps when God calls, perhaps they just come, this multitude of heavenly hosts. Perhaps they come winging through the winds of time, full of expectancy, full of hope that this year, perhaps the earth will fall to its knees in a whisper of peace.
Where do you sense the Spirit moving? What fills you with expectancy and hope?
When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, The shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that had taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger.
To listen, to look. Is it all sewn up, my life? Is it at this point so predictable, so orderly, so neat, so arranged, so right, that I don't have time or space for listening for the rustle of angels' wings, or running to stables to see a baby? Could this be what he meant when he said, "Listen, those who have ears to hear. Look, those who have eyes to see"? O God, give me the humbleness of shepherds who saw in the cold December darkness the coming of light, the coming of love, the advent of love.
When the shepherds saw the child, they made known what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart.
Mary, Nazareth girl. Mary, Nazareth girl, what did you know of ethereal beings with messages from God? What did you know of men when you found yourself with child? What did you know of babies, you barely out of childhood yourself? God-chosen girl, what did you know of God that brought you to this stable, blessed among women? Could it be that you had been ready, waiting, listening for the footsteps of an angel? Could it be there are messages for us if we have the faith to listen?
The mighty pilgrimage. It is time, once more, to set out taking the light of the one star as our only light, following in the footsteps of the shepherds who ran forward with such joy, the angel song still shimmering in the air, to kneel at the place where even kings fall prostrate, where gifts of gold shine no greater than any other gift. For the greatest gift is love. All who gather here know this, as we place our hearts beside the manger once more.
In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews?" After inquiring of the chief priests and scribes, Herod sent them to Bethlehem. The wise men set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road.
The Magi arrived to bring gifts to Jesus, to kneel and adore him. They departed as his protectors, not returning to Herod, but traveling home another way. Their gift was to protect, a greater gift than anything from their treasure chests. What gift do you bring? Take a moment to reflect on a gift you have to offer God's creation and community. How would you describe it in one word? Imagine yourself in a field next to a shed filled with hay. There is the hay in a manger bed. Imagine writing that word on a gold star and placing it in the manger. When you're ready, we'd invite you to share that word in the chat.
The gentle pull of God is often lost amidst the rush of all the obligations which lay a claim on us. Yet just beyond the frantic pace, our restless feet have trod thy deep still pools of quietness, the dwelling place of God. Meet me in the stillness, Lord. Be the air stillness, Lord. Lead the air I breathe. Lead me in the stillness, Lord. Free me to receive, to receive. Lead me in the stillness, Lord. Free me to receive,
Chris, thank you so much. Is it different every time you see it yourself? Do you have
Yes.
different?
Yes, it is. It is. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Yeah.
I think it reached us with all of its beauty, and I feel as though you've taken us to a whole different space from just this ordinary day. I know some things about your congregation, and maybe while other people are thinking of their questions, I'll put a question forward. That I know that you all have a really deep sense of calling to practices of racial justice, that you were founding members of the NAACP in your area. I think that's correct.
Yes.
And a real calling to care for the creation. And I'm wondering how a liturgical practice like this and other liturgical practices that you all engage in your congregation, how they relate to these other callings.
Oh, thank you for that question. So, so just a little bit of history. We have a number of covenants that express their identity of our congregation. They're both identity expressions and also they're aspirational. And one of them is related. We did call it the Whole Earth Covenant. We've recently revised that, expanded it so that we are a creation justice church, bringing together concerns for the climate with also concerns for justice. And that whole expansion happened during COVID. I mean, the time for us during the pandemic has not at all been a fallow time or a slow time. In fact, our mission commitments have only deepened. And when George Floyd was murdered, we recognized that we needed to be much more proactive about matters of racial justice. So we now have a racial justice ministry. We had previously to that been one of two founding congregations of the Boulder chapter of the NAACP. And we have several members of our congregation who are deeply involved in that. And it's a really active chapter working on education and criminal justice and advocacy in a whole number of ways. When George Floyd was murdered, 89 people from our congregation immediately signed up to do a 6-week series on white privilege. And since then, a ministry has formed and we continue to do lots of study. We're taking this practice of pilgrimage, and the next thing we're getting ready to do is to go on a pilgrimage on the Civil Rights Trail in March of 2023 during the public school break. But leading up to that, we're doing lots and lots of learning and conversation, and figuring out how to do advocacy around matters of racial justice. And all of those concerns get woven into our worship services, certainly into our prayers. We have a Sunday each year that's focused on a covenant commitment, but we don't want to just limit it to one Sunday a year, so that all of our justice commitments are woven into our life together. They've also become the lens through which we make decisions as a congregation, including, we're really committed, being a downtown church, to using our church as a community, opening up our doors in whatever way we can to share it with the wider community. And we especially make room for folks who are in keeping with our covenant commitments.
I want to explore just a piece of this, like what really, a couple of things really stick out to me from this Advent pilgrimage. One is spaciousness and peacefulness, and another is beauty. And those illustrations are just so beautiful. In addition to being meaningful, they're beautiful. And how does that connect with justice? Like, what's the connection between justice and beauty?
What a fabulous question. I don't think that I can answer that adequately. I don't think I want to ponder that some more. But, I think that it's both inspires our justice commitment, and it also, really what it is that we're all aiming for. That's our goal, isn't it? Is to appreciate both the beauty of our world and the beauty of people, which includes advocating for every justice concern. And it's really, there's that adoration and advocacy go together. It's adoring God and adoring God's world and adoring God's creation as in all of its manifestations, and all of our humanity. Seeing God. One of the things that the message of this season, isn't it, is the way that the divine and human are blurred, the way that heaven and earth come together. And it is beautiful.
Thank you so much.
This would be a great time if anyone has any more practical questions for Chris or theological questions. One just came in. Could you share what some of the love letters written at the end of the pilgrimage were like, Chris?
So we just opened the Advent Labyrinth, so there haven't been very many people who visited it this year yet. So I'd have to draw back and remember what it is that people wrote last year in the book that we left. It was both appreciation for all the folks whose hands were involved in putting the labyrinth together, the Skaggs who opened their farm to the community, the folks on our arts ministry who worked to put the art together, the graphic artists who put the words on the signs, the folks who put the signs up. So there were many, many hands involved in this. And also, I think just appreciation for this wonderful story that we get to step into and be a part of, that we're invited to participate in this ongoing story of Mary and Joseph's journey and of the Christ child. So people, with the questions that folks had, that we had put along the way, folks put some of their responses to those, in addition to putting the gifts on the stars that they then placed in the manger. They also put them in the book, the commitments that they were making for the year. And just little messages to people who were coming after them in the book. Yeah.
I love that. Oh, it's such a thoughtful ritual, and it's one that I could imagine, obviously this one is geared towards Advent, but I know that you all have been very thoughtful in how you've engaged the liturgical year overall and your callings as a congregation. And so maybe now could be a time to turn to this larger question of, how is the Christian liturgical year related to vocation and calling? Maybe if you could expand on how these vocational themes can come up in different liturgical seasons or cycles.
Sure. So many years ago, someone mentioned to me that the liturgical year is really like the process of respiration, that for half of the year, we are breathing in all the story of Jesus, all the way from Advent, his birth, his life, his ministry, his dying and his rising. And then from Pentecost on, when the Spirit that we're breathing out in mission. And of course, the liturgical year, that cycle is going on all the time, but even the shape of the whole year is about a deep breath in to renew us, and a breath out of our calling. Another way to think of the liturgical year that I have found to be really helpful in the book, Living the Christian Year, and I actually don't remember the author's name, but that's the title of the book. He talks about that there are three cycles in the liturgical year: the cycle of light, the cycle of life, and the cycle of love. That the cycle of light is Advent, Christmas, Epiphany of life. It's Lent and Easter, and the cycle of love is Pentecost through the season after Pentecost. And if we think about the cycle of light, there are ways in which we are always living in Advent. We're always lamenting and longing for more light, lamenting the ways that the fullness of God's presence eludes us still. Even as we celebrate it and proclaim its good news, and that we're waiting for the promises to come true, that we're always scanning the sky and the earth, looking for the signs of God among us. God is always asking us to say yes, like Mary, and that the longing for justice and for joy really is in many ways the permanent subtext of our lives. Are there other things that you would like to lift up in this?
I just want to take a pause to underscore something you just said, like the longing for justice and joy. And it's several times when you've been speaking, I wish I could underline something or pause it. Thank you for that. Just putting those together in this season. And I think COVID has been felt as such a drag on the spirit. And the people are very aware of problems that feel heavy, and to say justice and joy are this kind of twin longing, I think is really important for us now. So I just needed to pause and just make space for what you had said. I see Carol Younger has asked, has it been challenging to persuade people to take the time to make this particular Advent pilgrimage in a busy season? So would you say something about that?
So one of the things that I was surprised by last year is that folks actually kept coming back to it. So, I mean, I think it was both both getting to walk the labyrinth again, and some people went back 4 or 5 times to walk it over the course of the year and of the season rather. And also that it was an opportunity for folks to be able to meet each other. We all went hoping that somebody else would be there. And indeed, I mean, every time that I went, there were other folks who were there. So there were cars coming in and out of the Skaggs driveway all the time through the season. And in fact, we originally, when we first put this together, we ended it at Christmas. And then we realized, oh, you know what, we're really not done. So so David and Laura, the Skaggs, invited us to extend it to Epiphany. So we added another station, that was focused on the Magi, and then told the congregation that it's still open until January 6th. So yeah, it didn't take persuading at all. I think, we'll have to see what it's like this season when things are a bit more open, but I think that it was so meaningful in ways that we never anticipated, that folks told each other about it and encouraged each other to go. And people brought friends, kids brought their friends to share in it. It was lovely.
That's so beautiful, Chris. And I get the sense just from getting to know your congregation over the years that folks are really drawn into the arts in general. I mean, you have so many different opportunities for people to engage visual arts and various kinds. And I'm wondering if you could speak a bit to how the arts have impacted or drawn out your congregation's communal calling.
Well, we have a number of artists in our congregation, and also Boulder is a big arts community. And so our arts ministry, which was formed about 10 years ago, originally the primary thing that the arts ministry has done is that we have gallery space that is available to the community for artists to show, and we've over the years become a preferred space. So every 2 months there would be a new art show, and it would begin with a reception, and we're connected to the wider community of artists in Boulder, so that they help us advertise whenever there is an opening. And actually, there have been times when people have come into to see the art, and they realize, oh, we're in a church. So we've been trying to make that more explicit as folks are coming in, that this is a church that's hosting this. The other thing that we've been just in the last 2 years just really exploring more fully is how do we bring arts into worship more? Both in, we have lots of, the paraments and all of the visual arts that are a part of our service. Just before the pandemic, actually, we had an artist who had created the Stations of the Cross with trees, and we hung it right in the sanctuary so that people, and invited people to come into the sanctuary and to take the Stations of the Cross as a pilgrimage with that. And we did a whole education series. We have a member of our church who with each season, for a couple of years, with each season he would do adult education on different facets of arts. So it's something that we're continually growing in and trying to draw the connections between worship and art, and it happens in a whole variety of ways.
I'm interested in how you, just sort of a little bit of nuts and bolts about how you created this experience. Was there a committee who helped you choose the art and the words? Because what fascinates me about it is the way in which you've created something that is really accessible to people across a whole range of ages. And it's, for even the most complex thinker, there are rewards. For an adult who's experienced this story for, decades and decades, or for a young child, there are openings and delights. And that's hard to do.
I think when we went into this, we really didn't know how meaningful it was going to be. So a lot of this has been a surprise for us, even who've planned it. And what people have brought into it is as important as what was created, what people have brought as they brought themselves into it. So how was it all created? Our arts ministry, so I had last year put together the script, basically. with the questions, and I handed it to our arts ministry, who then looked for accompanying illustrations to go with it. And they at first were looking at fine arts to see, and then realized but we had also pulled out some children's literature for them to take a look at. And there was a group of 3 or 4 folks from the arts ministry, and they realized that the art in the children's books just brought a whole new dimension to it, and enabled then for it to be more accessible across generations. And so this year, when we developed a new script with poetry as well as scripture, and adding some questions to it, we didn't even go to fine arts. We just found, and I've been collecting, watching for new children's literature coming out, children with illustrations that might work for this. And so there was a few of us who met just a few weeks ago and pulled together and chose the art. Last year, all of the art was drawn from one children's book. This year, as you saw, we pulled them from about half a dozen children's books. And the Skaggs mowed the labyrinth through their property. Actually, they did it as soon as the grass was tall enough. So the labyrinth has been waiting for us since the summer, waiting for this.
It's lovely. There's a really interesting comment in the Q&A from Patricia. The understanding of thin spaces at different times of the year and in many worldly spaces strikes me as a place to put my reflection this year. We have so many ways to encounter God's love, God's invitation, God's commands to be holy and to be workers for peace, justice, and joy. She gathered up a lot of what you're saying.
So lovely. Thank you for that. One of the things that we've done in previous years that we're going to do in a new way this year, we've had an Epiphany service on as close to the evening of Epiphany as we can get it, where we invite folks to come for dinner, and then we do a candlelight procession through the church building, blessing all of the spaces. During COVID, we actually sent out gifts to every household and we had 60 magi and we gave them Burger King crowns to wear to make their deliveries as they delivered these gift bags to every household. And included in that gift bag was a house blessing kit. So with the candles that we used for our Epiphany procession. And this year on January 2nd, after the 10:30 worship service, we're inviting the congregation to walk through spaces, especially as we prepare to open more fully later in the year, open the building up. We're, hopefully we're still limiting attendance, but we can imagine the day when we can open up all the rooms again and share them in the community. So we'll have a candlelight procession to bless all of those spaces again.
Well, that's very exciting, Chris. And I see, who's joined us here, quite a few of your colleagues from the communities of calling and other folks who work in active ministry. And I think what you're offering here are such practical ideas that could be taken into other congregations' contexts and kind of adapted, but that are also so theologically and liturgically rich. Really appreciate what you're sharing.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, we also, it's been really fun actually to imagine prayer stations. Because since we couldn't congregate to worship, how could we create experiences for each season when folks could come together, and it could still, and to making it a communal experience, is that people were sharing it by talking about it outside of worship and leaving notes for one another. But we had prayer stations during January. We put prayer stations in and then had people sign up to come and visit it. We did the same thing during Holy Week. and we also created a communal art project for during Lent as well. That is a COVID memorial, where we sent home to folks. We put in the mail instructions to how to make origami butterflies, and invited folks to write prayers in them, and also the names of people who've been ill and folks who have died from COVID, to fold them into the butterflies and to bring them back to the church. We strung them all together and put them in the sanctuary. There were thousands of butterflies that showed up, and so many butterflies that we have a pulley system in our sanctuary, a rope and pulley system, so that there are butterflies that go all the way to the rafters. And then we had so many butterflies, they came all the way down to the pew cushions and all the way down to the floor, from the chancel to the floor. And so when the sanctuary, when we couldn't have people in there, it was filled with butterflies. And then when we opened up in June, we didn't take the butterflies down, we just trimmed them. And then they were set free, many of them, and they would drift down to the floor. We'd come into the sanctuary and find butterflies all over the floor. And we just very recently took them all down. The first butterflies that went up were in honor and memory of the 10 Boulder neighbors who were shot and killed in the King Soopers grocery store in March. And then during Holy Week, in time for Easter, all of the other butterflies went up.
Wow, just a powerful statement to show for both your congregation and your larger community.
Yeah. And strings of those butterflies actually have now been given to the Museum of Boulder to place in their archives as a memorial during COVID.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Chris, we're coming to the top of the hour. Any final comments from you or from Jane before we close out?
Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you for this space of thoughtful reflection.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Thank you, Chris. We're so grateful to you. You're getting some kudos in the chat here. Grateful for your wisdom, your insights, and this great Advent reflection as we kick off this great liturgical season. And thanks to all of you for joining and sharing. We have our next Collegeville Connection, the first one of 2022, will be on Wednesday, January 19th. Will be a conversation with the Collegeville Institute's new executive director, Dr. Jacqueline Bussey. So we invite you to join us then and other events in the future. In the meantime, blessings on this season, and we're grateful for you and your connection to Collegeville. Peace, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.